it's important to know that the goal you start with is not the one you're going to necessarily end with, but it's important that you get started. And so let's just talk about the goal the billionaire started with. Now, this story is the story of Art Williams, of A.O. Williams fame. And you can read about him on Wikipedia. But anyway, when Art started, he was a football coach. So you got to start where you start. You can't start where you're not at. And wishing and hoping is not going to change. And he was a football coach. His father had been a football coach. He loved being a football coach. Trouble is, no money. He had a wife, Angela. They had the 2 kids. And Angela was involved with the cheerleaders and booster clubs. And Art was coach of the year in football, but no money. They were back in the 70s, and they were making something like, 25, 26,000 per year. And he needed more income. Art was forced to supplement his income, and he was selling Christmas trees. A bunch of the coaches, he would get together with a bunch of the coaches, and they'd go by up to North Carolina with a truck and buy a bunch of Christmas trees and stay out in the cold weather for 3 weeks in the evenings and weekends selling trees so they could make a few extra bucks to have Christmas for their kids. He would run up and down the basketball court doing refereeing basketball games. And believe it or not, now this is the early 70s, he would get, around 70, he would get $3 per game. He would do 3 games a night, and he would get $9. Now, he would have preferred not to do that, but he had to do something. So if you do that 2 or 3 times a week, you do that 4 weeks in a month, you come up with 100, 150 extra bucks a month. It all adds up, and he needed to do something. In the summer, he was lifeguard at the pool. And there are people doing these kind of things today to get by. And this is the real world, because you can't, hoping and praying is not going to change your situation overnight without some work, some focused work. And here's where he was. So he gets started in a new business. He gets a chance to go out and get involved in the buy term and invest the difference business, replacing overpriced, high-priced, obscenely overpriced whole life policies with term and mutual funds. And of course, it is wildly popular, but he was right in the beginning stages of that. So, what was his first goal? Now, I've kind of given away the punchline. How did this turn out for Art? Pretty darn well over the years. But this is in the beginning. What was his first goal? Well, you start and do things based off the framework of what you know at that time. But the great thing about your goal is that you can adjust it. So the thing is, he said, if I'm making around $30,000 a year, that's what it takes for me to survive on. And so if I'm starting this new business, I'm going to try and become financially independent. It's his first goal of financial independence. He said, I'm making 30 a year. So if I had accumulated a pile of money of $300,000, now again, at the time, I'm not making any promises of what I'm telling you the facts. At that time, there was a 50-year, maybe 60-year track record of the average stock mutual fund averaging 12% a year. And of course, there had been wars and depressions and this, that, and the other going on too, just like we have now today. You're not getting 12% on your money in mutual funds, average, of course. And but you know, he's looking at the long-term average, and he had planned to put his money in there and leave. So he said, if I have this, he said, I think I could reasonably. Now this is art, not me. I'm not applying this for today. I'm just saying this is his goal. He said, if I have that and I can get 10%, and I'm looking at a track record of 50, 60 years of 12%, if I can get 10%, guess what that comes out to? That comes out to $30,000 a year interest. So if I can so when he started out in his own business, he said, if I can just save what I make and race towards, as soon as I get to $300,000, I never have to work for anybody else the rest of my life. See, having this goal, having it written down on a piece of paper, putting it in his pocket, having it where as his accounts started to build and this started to get less and less, it kept him focused. It gave him a unique energy. Now, of course, he reached that and many others, and he adjusted it upwards but he said, Larry, it's a funny, as he was telling me about this, he said, it's a funny thing when you start out. He said, your money grows very small because there's nothing else in there. But once you have some in there, what you have in there starts to compound, plus you keep adding more in there, and it starts to compound very fast. So in the beginning, it might look like it's going slow, but he said the longer you go, the faster it grows. And where it may seem like it's going to take you forever to put 30,000 in, that if you get compound interest along with that as you go from year after year, that's going to add to the total, and you're going to find you don't have to put the whole $300,000 in. You don't have to earn the whole $300,000. Your compound interest is going to make up a lot of the difference. And so he said, seeing this happen gave me a special energy, a special focus, but also a special confidence, because I knew I was on track to get where I wanted to go, and I knew that once I reached that goal, I would never have to work for anybody else the rest of my life. I'd be financially independent. Eventually, his net worth climbed up to over $2 billion. And so, obviously, his goals and everything changed. But here's where it started. Right there. So, if you're thinking about yourself, the main thing is get your first goal. Get specific. Get something. Because you might find that that's just a beginning for you too. But if you never start, you never have a chance. So that's the first goal the billionaire started with.